Welcome to Inside Style. I'm your host, George Worrell, and thank you for tuning in today. In our quest to fulfill a great life, the pursuit of happiness is a timeless aspiration. We all desire contentment, meaning seeking joy and the purpose of our experiences, whether through relationships, achievements, or inner peace. The pursuit of happiness reflects our fundamental desire to embrace life's joys and navigate its challenges, which fulfill and delight. This universal pursuit underscores our belief and a belief in happiness, a transformative force that enriches our journey through life. My topic today, how success follows happiness, not the other way around. And the life story of our special guest today is a life lesson on how to reach that level of happiness. Our guest today hails from Brooklyn, New York, as well as Lowell, Massachusetts. He's the founder and chairman and majority owner and CEO of Monumental Sports and Entertainment and embodies the quintessential self-made success story. He has seamlessly transitioned from his humble beginnings to become a billionaire entrepreneur and philanthropist. Alongside his business acumen, our guest also is renowned for his impeccable sense of style. His interest in watches and sneakers mirrors his keen eye for both luxury and authenticity, while his commitment to giving back to the community reflects a deeply committed, ingrained sense of responsibility and gratitude. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome Mr. Ted Leonsis.
That was a beautiful introduction. I really am humbled and flattered. And your countenance has a lot of happiness in it. Just the way you were reading that, it was really lovely.
Thank you so much. We'd met years ago briefly, but
15 years ago.
15 years.
You remembered me, and I remembered you from 15 years ago. Because of what you were wearing.
What I was wearing. And I remembered your kindness and that you were inquisitive and wanted to know more about the suit, more about me. We corresponded for a while, and this is full circle for me. Full circle.
Well, I was happy to hear from you, and I'm really proud that you're a hyphenate now. You're a multimedia developing TV, radio, podcasting, but really all to support local community, local merchants. Good for you.
I'm loving it. And let's just kick it off about your upbringing in Brooklyn and then going to Lowell, Mass. But how was it growing up as an only child? We have that in common in Brooklyn.
Well, I didn't know I was poor because you don't know. My dad was a waiter. My mom was a temporary secretary. And we lived in a rental apartment shared with 3 other families, on 3 floors. And it was the greatest, right? You played stickball on the street. You played softball, baseball, basketball. Hoops was like so important. You walked to school. When I went to high school, you started to take the train. Can you imagine doing that like today? It's amazing that you would even hitchhike back in the day. And so, the neighborhood, you'd ride your bike, you'd leave your bike outside. And so it was a very, very happy time. It was my neighborhood was very integrated. We had Puerto Ricans and black people and Swedish people and Vietnamese people, and that was just the melting pot of Brooklyn. And I loved it. I'd go to church all the time. I'd go to Sunday school. I will tell you an interesting story. I just read an interview with a guy who was the founder of FTX, which was a firm that was doing crypto, and he got arrested. They also were sponsors of a lot of NBA teams, including the Wizards, Sam Bankman-Friedman, and he's in prison. And he's in jail on 29th Street in Brooklyn, New York, and I grew up on 44th Street. And when I was, I think, 11 years old, we went to a Scared Straight program where we went to that prison and we spent the whole day in jail. And it was a program that the police and the school system did. And it basically was to say, prison and jail is not an experience that you want to have, and it would scare you. And, you know, when I read this article about this guy who was once worth $28 billion, and now he's in the prison that we went to as kids, and it worked on me. I mean, we spent one day in jail, and I said, I will never do anything that could get me into that kind of trouble. And you know, I think that experience was very, very forming for me. And then when we moved to Lowell, Massachusetts, Lowell, it was a mill town. It was where all of the immigrants came in and worked the mills. My father and his family were immigrants, and my grandfather, who worked at a mill, died 6 months after coming. And is buried in a pauper's grave. I mean, I want you to think about it. It's not that long ago, early 1900s, and people would die basically because there was no OSHA, there was no regulations of what the workplace would be like. And they died, and they had just come from Greece. They didn't have any money, and so they buried them in a pauper's grave in Lowell, Massachusetts. It's truly amazing, the American experience and the American immigrant experience.
You also, in reading your book, I think something that, in addition to the Scared Straight, that helped form your thinking was that your best friend had gotten in trouble by robbing a store. Was it a liquor store?
It was a pharmacy. And again, it shows you it's a game of inches. So I grew up and had best friends and neighbors. You know, you do the sleepovers, you go on camp days together and the like. And my one friend at 16 years old started to hang out with some people that I was not as familiar with and started doing drugs. And that summer, I just remember I would go walk with him from school, and I would go and play basketball with the same group of friends, and he would stay outside and sit on the park benches with this new group of kids. And I would try to get him to come in and play hoops. He was pretty good, but he had these new influences, and they started out, I remember, sniffing glue. In these paper bags, they would sniff glue, and then they started smoking pot. And he went on to doing harder and harder drugs. And at 16 years old, he went and with some people and robbed the pharmacy and was shot and killed. And it was one of those existential moments for my family. That's why we moved to Lowell. My mom said, I got to get you out of here. This isn't what we were expecting, this neighborhood. And it turned into a best of times, worst of times community where there was a lot of gunplay, there was a lot of violence, there was a lot of breaking and entering, there was a lot of drug overdoses. And so I witnessed that as a very young kid, and I realize now when I look back, you know, there by the grace of God, right? I could have one time just said, yeah, I'll hang out with you. And so that's another really, really great lesson. The people around you, the influence around you really will dictate how things turn out for you.
How did that experience moving forward shape that entrepreneurial spirit, that dreaming, like partnering the dreaming with the saying, hey, I think I can do this way?
Well, I'd like to give you a romantic big answer, but it was pragmatism. When we moved from Brooklyn, it was tight quarters. You could walk to school, you could walk to the playground, you could walk to the pizza parlors, there were buses, there were subways. And we moved to Lowell, it was suburban. And I had never worked, I needed a job, I needed a car, I had no way to get it. And so I went to a library. It's amazing how libraries and books can change your life. And I went looking at how-to books. Now you can go on YouTube and find Google. Anything. But I found how to mow lawns. And I'll never forget this. You had your little library card, you read the book, you took the book out, and I used the book as my marketing tool. And there were all these big houses with big lawns, and I started knocking on people's doors. I'm a student in high school, and over the summer I want to make some money, and could I mow your lawn? And most people had zero interest, and one man said, tell me more. And so I just moved here, and I said, have you ever mowed a lawn? I said, no, but I read this book. And here are all these drawings on the style of mowing the lawn. And he gave me a break. He said, you know what? There's my garage. Come on, I'll show you. Do a good job. And truthfully, for that 2 hours, I was the best lawnmower on the planet. I mowed that guy's lawn as fastidiously and as precisely as possible because I needed the gig. I needed the job. I needed someone to say yes. And he came out with his wife. A couple of times he was looking out the window. And he said, okay, you can do this. Yeah. And so for the summer, I mowed his lawn. And at the end of the summer, he said, you thinking of going to college? And I said, I haven't been that serious about it yet. He said, I went to Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. Let me get you an application, some information. And I never heard of Georgetown University, never been to Washington, D.C. I applied, I got in. First time I'd ever been in Washington, D.C. was I got off a Greyhound bus on New York Avenue at the Trailsway station. And mid-'70s. First mayor we ever had was mid-'70s. Title IX was just passed. First time women were starting to go to Georgetown, GW American, but all was happening that same time. And I said, oh, this is the greatest situation ever. And that's how I got to Georgetown. But that guy doesn't give me the break, but I don't capitalize on it. Something as simple and little as I'm going to be the best mower of lawn that you've ever seen. I mean, I was on my knees with a scissors, like cutting the end. And, I tell people that all the time. When you do an internship, when you do that first assignment, you can differentiate yourself through being earnest and honest and doing extra work. You can't mail it in. That's something that I see happening now that disappoints me. Someone gets a great opportunity and they don't take advantage of it. In fact, they think, I got the opportunity, that's the end of the story. No, it's the very beginning of the story. Is that open door, and once that door is open, that you need to be ready to walk through it. Yep. So when we're segueing through Georgetown, and what are you thinking about career-wise? What are you thinking about? How do you want to do that? How do you partner all of that in the dreaming from that cutting that grass? So, I came to Georgetown, and pretty much all of my friends and roommates, their mothers and fathers had gone to college. I was the first kid in my family to go to college. I suffered initially from imposter syndrome. It's, what am I doing here? And I was assigned, every student at Georgetown at the time was assigned a mentor, and my mentor was a Jesuit priest, Father Joseph Durkin, and he was the greatest. And he and I got along, and he made me do some things in a thesis, and he pushed me, and it was the first time that I won something. I won best in class, best thesis. But all of a sudden it was like, hey, these kids went to private schools. These kids are rich kids. These kids they have cars. Because Georgetown wasn't a need-blind school, I had jobs, I had scholarship, I had loans, and I'd see these kids taking for granted school. They'd sleep late, they'd miss class, they wouldn't pay attention in class where I was paying for it. That's how I looked at it. And all of a sudden I was kicking their ass. And I went, oh, it doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter what you're privileged and enabled. It matters what's the outcome of your work. And everything I tried to do when I was in college, I wanted to be the best student. I worked in a shoe store on Wisconsin Avenue to make money. And the guy, I still think it was a front for something, because after the first weekend I worked there, the guy said, "You're doing a great job." And as soon as I would show up, he would leave. And he left me alone, like running this shoe store, right? And you could tell, like, the difference today from there. You'd run downstairs to get people their shoes, and upstairs would be empty. Right? There'd be no one manning the place. Mm-hmm. And that's why I thought, but he said, I trust you, you're competent, and I tried to be the best shoe salesman. Mm. And I do think that is a habit that you can form early. How do you differentiate? How do you work harder? How do you define what victory and excellence is? I'm going to sell the most shoes, and I'm going to bundle. I never allowed someone to not buy shoes and show them the belts, show them the trinkets that would go with it. And I just think that being able to be self-motivated, to be the best at something is a life lesson that's very important.
Did that start your fashion savvy, your look? Your thoughts?
It might have, because I had no sense of brands. I had no sense of what was in fashion, in style. When I came to Georgetown, most of the kids were preppy. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't pull preppy off. I didn't know what to wear. I do remember one time it was raining, and everyone was wearing these, like, yellow rain slicker things. Yeah. And it was like, is this a school uniform? I didn't really understand how people, I saw everyone wearing white button-downs and khaki pants and the like. And so I had established my own sense of what would work. Because I was younger, mm-hmm. My parents, both who needed to work, I went to kindergarten early. I have a January birthday. And then I skipped the 8th grade. And so when I went to college, I was 16 years old. And so you don't really have the self-confidence, and I didn't have the dollars available. I started to meet and hang out and have roommates, and I had very eclectic roommates. One of my roommates was, in fact, I met him, and we were talking just the other day. I was living in Albin Towers at the corner of Mass Avenue. So I'd walk to school, and I was walking down a street, and there's this guy with long red hair and a high white shirt, and he had his jacket on, but he was wearing it not with his arms in his sleeves, almost like it was a cape. And he had a bottle of champagne walking down the street. And so I walked by and I went, "Hey, how you doing?" And student at Georgetown, and I am too. And so we're walking together, and he had just transferred from a school in Switzerland. And he had like this European flair, and he hung out with all of like the European international kids from France, kids from Italy. And you didn't realize at Georgetown, well, half the student body, or 40% of the student body, is international. And so there were these preppy kids, there were these international kids with flair, there were rich kids, and then there were kids who were scholarship kids. And so I found over time that my sense of style became like a mashup. You know, this looks cool on him. It also gets influenced by girls, right? Like you're wearing something, and I remember being in 1789 bar once with my friend, and I was wearing like a black turtleneck. I think my friend Jake said, "Turtlenecks are in." And I was wearing a black turtleneck, and this girl came up to me and she said, "You look nice." And it was like, note to self, turtlenecks are in. And so my sense of style has morphed. And now I'm in the, as you are, I would say in the quiet luxury. You don't have to scream. I'm wearing a hoodie today. It's cashmere. It's a Brunelli Cucinelli brand, and you know, I'm wearing a shirt with cufflinks. I had these cufflinks made. This was a puck from the Stanley Cup winning game. And, you know, I got one of the pucks. I said, what can I do with the puck that's cool other than just leave it on my desk? And so I asked somebody, I do wear French cuffs. Could they make
this is a great match.
Cufflinks for me, right? So there's it's black and white, the cufflink. And I'm wearing a black and white shirt. Yeah, it matches. I've got on a Rolex watch.
So talk about the watch. I understand that you love watches.
So I do love watches, and it's interesting because this new generation doesn't wear watches, right? And I say, like, I don't wear jewelry. Watches are my jewelry. And so I started to, early on, you know, when I made my first real wealth, besides buying my mom and dad a home and a car, I bought my dad a nice watch. He never had a nice watch. We never had nice watches. And so I started to study. And so obviously Rolex was the mainstream, and still I would say a important watch. But this is a Rolex watch. It's a Yachtsman, but I found a designer who will take the watch. Unfortunately, it nullifies the warranty. So there's some risk, but he matte finished it. And so, you know, I probably have a couple of hundred watches, but now a lot of the watches are from a company that I made a big investment in. It's called Shinola. And they are not high fashion watches. They're $500 to $2,000 watches. But they became a part of the turnaround of the city of Detroit, where the founder of the company said we need to put people to work. It's mostly black women. Teach them a new skill, how to be a jeweler, how to make and manufacture watches. And I have every watch that they make. We also worked and designed a watch for Tom Ford, who was the fashion icon. He was the original designer, great designer at Gucci. I'm wearing Gucci sneakers today.
I love those.
Those are very nice and they're very comfortable. What I don't like, though, about them, and I've communicated to some people, don't make the logos big. Okay, I think the age of showing off, you want to be stealth wealth. So I know you're a man of style. I have no idea if that shirt is Cucinelli or Target. But the way you present yourself, that's the whole idea. You could be wearing, that shirt could be $2,000 or $20. But the way you wear it and how you bring it all together, but that's what stealth wealth is all about. And I think that's very important, especially in today's business environment where you want to self-express, but you also want to be able to not be a point of attention that becomes so loud that it takes away from what are you doing at work? What are your achievements at work?
That you're able to make that medium, and that's an art. It's an art innately to be able to walk that line where you are wearing what I call quality. And what I would tell my clients is to identify well-made clothes before you look at the label. Because you could find it TJ Maxx, you could find it, like you said, Target, you can go to Tom Ford, you can go to all of these places, but you are looking for well-made garments that that are going to fit you and you can feel that.
Yeah, and you don't need a lot of them, right? Having 3, 4, 5 Tom Ford suits is much better than having
20,
50.
Yeah.
Right. It really is.
It really is.
And having basic colors, high quality clothing that you can wear year after year. And, you know, sneakers are now, I think, very, very important. Collectibles around sneakers are very important. I was the first investor in a company called StockX, and StockX has become vitally important because companies will make limited runs of things. It can be watches, it can be handbags, it can be wallets, it can be sneakers. And being able to have access to those is really, really key. Now, I was humble bragging about jewelry because I don't wear jewelry, but I've spent the last 25 years in pursuit of the most expensive jewelry, and my wife reminded me of that. I bought her a nice piece for Mother's Day, and I did a little bit of a gulp, and she said, "No, wait a second. Rings seem to be something that are important to you."
Wow.
And so I brought for you to try on and wear. We can take a picture. So these are championship rings.
So heavy.
Right, so these were the Washington Capitals and the Washington Mystics.
This
and
is amazing.
When we owned our Arena Football League team, And this is from Team Liquid, an esports team. And this is from our NBA 2K. We were double champions.
Wow.
And you can see that they're certainly not understated.
If I didn't care.
When you win a championship.
This is amazing, Ted.
You want to reward your players and your organization. And so you could say that, that ring right there was $1 billion of spending for the team and for the payroll and the losses. So that's the only jewelry that I want to be focused on. We've just celebrated our 25th anniversary of owning the Caps. We're staying in D.C., as you know, and we'll sign a 25-year lease. I said, it's the rest of my life, and I want to be able to have more rings. I think we have in total 10 or 11 rings for championships for all of our organizations. We need to more than double that. And, nothing brings a community closer together than a winning sports team. And people want a badge, and they wear your colors. There's nothing better feeling than going to a playoff game and seeing everyone wearing your jersey. Wearing red for the Caps. And, our very biggest focus is to do that with the Wizards. We need to win a championship for the Wizards and bring the community together and make that logo and that style very cool. And
you're the man to do it. I want to thank you so much for taking it. Will you come back?
I'll come back, and you're a good man. I'm really proud of you and what you extol to your audience. People know your backstory. That there's only 3 acts in the American drama. If you look at all of the literature, if you look at all of the writings, the Bible itself, there's 3 acts. Young kid comes out of nowhere, defies the experts, has this great win, is put on a pedestal. Second act is a great fall from grace. It could be because of your own actions. It could be evil competitors. It can be circumstances beyond your control. But there is a fall. And people in media, people in neighborhoods, the essence of gossip, that fall is sometimes amplified even more than the rise. But it's America. And the third act is the comeback. And we love a comeback. And you're in a comeback. I'm in a comeback. Every person needs to understand what part of that 3-act drama are they in, and that you're able to become an exemplar to young people in the city because of your fall really is important. And I'm really happy and proud of what you're doing, and to do it with a sense of flair and fashion and style. And, that's how I send out a lot of things. I say, wear it with style. Right? If you're going to wear it, you might as well wear it with style.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for coming on. We want to thank our listeners. Thank you again, Ted Leonsis. And thank you for tuning into Inside Style. This is George Worrell, and we'll see you next time. Remember, real style starts with being comfortable in your own skin. Bye-bye.